Yeah.
New class.
Come on.
Old
It's
school.
for the
Yeah.
old school.
Look. And how we
Green
living
ass
out there.
Twitter.
I got a plan, sorta. All I need is one mic and a camcorder. You might have heard of luck. If you never did, you should turn this up.
Let go.
And take a good listen to the street knowledge that the hood missing. I got a plan, sorta. All I need is one mic and a camcorder.
Thank you for joining us for our second edition of our video podcast series, Men in 10. My name is Christian Cole. I am the current vice president of the Student African American Brotherhood here at Stony Brook University, and I'm here with my two brothers.
My name is Isaiah J. Karras. I'm the Sergeant at Arms for the Student African American Brotherhood.
And my name is William Braxton. I'm the Community Service Chair of the Student African American Brotherhood.
Thank you for joining me. So today we're going to talk about a few topics relating to the criminalization of black men. But before we get started, I just want to welcome my brother back. He just came back from a wonderful trip. Tell us where you went.
Thank you. I went to Stanford University for a debate tournament. It was a great experience. Got to see San Francisco, San Jose. I'll be able to represent Stony Brook around other prestigious universities from across the country.
Just tell us, so what were some of your opponents?
We went against some other well-known Ivy League schools, Harvard, I'm sure, UC Berkeley, a variety of different teams.
Wow, that's an experience.
Thank you very much.
Crazy. So today we're talking about the criminalization of black men. And before we get into that, I want to introduce a topic to open it up. So there's an idea that was first coined by W.E.B. Du Bois in the early 20th century. It was called double consciousness. And by double consciousness, he spoke about the idea of black men having two identities and being aware of those two identities and how that sort of affected them as they move through life. So it's the oneness with two souls, and it's that awareness that you are your African identity and then you're also your American identity. But while knowing those two identities, you're aware that members of the society don't view you as whole Americans due to the fact that you are an African American. And just what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's African American people, African American men specifically in relation to us. We have to go through a process of decriminalization with ourselves whenever we present ourselves in professional environments, areas, or even social engagements. We have to go through this sort of reassurance of people around us that we're not an imminent threat, that we're not hazardous or dangerous, that we're not looking to cause them any potential harm with our actions and activities, that we're merely just walking into a store or trying to apply for a job, things of that nature. So I definitely think that there's more obstacles that we have to climb through, hoops to jump through and things of that nature in order to just get regular recognition because of what the media has done to the betrayal of the black man.
Absolutely. Like, in my opinion, I've definitely felt that feeling that when I walk into an area, I need to present myself as, like you said, a non-threat, or just because I know that there's stories where just the way I look may be perceived to be threatening to members of another community. And as men of color, we have to keep that idea, and it affects us. William, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my kind of thoughts is, yeah, I hear that, and I think also, I see it as like a very damaging like kind of thing where you always have to be aware of yourself and who you are. You're always asking that question, like, who am I? You feel like you have to act certain ways to fit in or not be a threat in certain situations, and constantly being like just aware of yourself, how you act can be like very distracting from being your genuine self.
Did you have any thoughts on like your perception as a black man in the white community?
Yes, I grew up around in a white community, and kind of like my perception of that is, I kind of had it like in two ways. It's kind of like a whole like identity thing of who was I, because I grew up like around a whole bunch of white people, and I'm the only black person, and I feel like I'm always like aware of how I'm acting. Are they attributing stereotypes to me? What would they say? Like I hear stuff like, oh, like you're not like other black people, or oh, like you're like an inside out Oreo. But I also feel it, with my other like brothers. Sometimes I feel like when I'm around them, like, am I really black? How can I, like, do I relate to them? Can I connect? And sometimes I feel like, I don't have a place of belonging. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle.
Wow, yeah. I definitely hear that, and I think the term Oreo that you may hear, and like some people say you're black on the outside, white on the inside, and that's just something that some people have to deal with, and it sounds like that's something that you faced.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Just a quick question I want to pose to the two of you. How does the portrayal of black men as criminals in society reinforce double consciousness ideology?
Well, I think that you can look at it from a historical perspective and see how black men, the black community overall, has had to deal with this idea of double consciousness and the representation in American society. You can go back to as early as vagrancy laws following the emancipation of slavery in terms of legal restrictions that were put in place specifically in relation to African American communities, punishing them for not having a place of residence, permanent, or any relative location, and then you can go forward to punishing people for participating in civil rights movements in the pursuit of acquisition of human rights and identification. Then you can go a few decades earlier and look at the punishment put upon the progenitors of the Black Power movement, seeking to just acknowledge and proclaim a black identity and take pride in their existence under the context of being an American. It wasn't necessarily the conversation about exclusivity. It was more about aggrandizing the importance overall of our culture and where we come from. And then you can go even further, some more decades into, and talk about the concept of the super predator complex that came about between the 80s and the 90s, and just the criminalization of black men there. That's where we really see the era of mass incarceration happening. So I think that there's been a great misrepresentation and a societal and structural oppression that's happened to the black man that's been extremely detrimental.
Absolutely. So you mentioned two things. You mentioned slavery and mass incarceration. So some people call mass incarceration the modern day slavery. And that's just something that is becoming a real issue, and people don't like to talk about it, or they don't want to really stress the importance of it. But us as black men, we feel pressures in society, and pressures from police system, police brutality. We're seeing stories about our brothers being brutalized, as well as that feeling that there's a criminal element to being a black male. So us as brothers, we're here to give our voice on that. And strictly speaking, previously preceding the super predator was the war on drugs. Do you have any thoughts about that, William?
Oh man, the war on drugs, that stuff is like, my thoughts on that is, I was gonna say, it's crazy because like, the war on drugs, I feel like now that kind of stuff is treated like more like a mental health issue, and it's like, oh, how can we help people like get off of these drugs? How can we help them get better? But back then, the war on drugs was like, it wasn't treated like that. It was criminalized, and lots of poor people and black people who were caught with drugs were put in prison and kind of just left there. They weren't given like the help that they may have needed or whatnot. They were just criminalized. So it's just like crazy to see that dynamic. And I remember I was watching the documentary 13th. What was the president of the time? Oh man,
Bill Clinton?
No, Reagan.
Nixon?
Reagan.
Okay.
Reagan. It was like one of his advisors was like caught on tape, kind of speaking about it, and he said like, back then, you can say like, oh, like we do this and like this hurts black people like this, like that, like that. But then he's saying like, but now like you can't do that. It's not acceptable. So we rephrase the problem. We say like different things. We say like, oh, like tax cuts, or like, war on drugs. Like, and it's like it hurts the black person more than the white person. He outright said that,
Yeah.
So it's just like crazy how that's like the thought process that was back then, but it's not like seen.
Absolutely. So with that, that wraps up our 10-minute segment for today. But we're going to ask you to join us, to stay tuned for our second segment where we continue our discussion. Thank you guys for joining me. It's great.
All I need is one mic and a camcorder.